Hello, and welcome to the Parent Problems Today podcast. Today, I'm your host, Robert Trout, along with Mary Zaunbrecher from the Parent Trainers team. And today's episode is slightly different than some of the episodes we've had in the past. We want to kind of step into a topic that's also a message. And this is a message for every parent that is listening to this right now. We're going to title this episode From Hopeless to Hopeful. And the reason for that is that today's topic is looking at a paradigm shift that happens for a lot of the families that we work with. And this is really centered on the idea that it is a very natural process for parents who are working with a teen, tween, or young adult who, especially one that is stepping into a mental health process or going through a crisis or a struggle or a breakdown or something that's happening for them neurologically. Now, for those parents, we recognize a pattern. And that's what we want to talk about is that a lot of parents who find us and other resources to work with, they're not in the middle of the road when we look at this idea of having the energy to work towards a problem. Very often, humans, and this again is a message of hope, humans have a process that we step into where we go negative first. We guess what to say or do. We think of ourselves as doing a bad job. We start to become judgmental, self judgmental, and judgmental of others. And we start to step into this zone that we can only call hopelessness. Now, this is where we get to kind of assess ourselves as parents. In hopelessness, we see one of two primary reactions. There are other reactions, but the primary reactions are one, in hopelessness, we become charged. We don't like this feeling. We want a solution. We want to change the circumstance that's happening for us and driving this process where we feel this energy that makes us either react or change. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The second outcome to this that's primary is when parents step into hopelessness, they shut down.
Mhm.
They start to isolate. They start to push themselves away from not only their children, but others, friends, partners, family dynamics, whatever it might be. We see this kind of leveling away from the conflict and struggle that's happening that in the first place created this sense of hopelessness. Mary, I'm going to pass it to you, but I first want to kind of create a definition, and then I want to get your thoughts on this definition. When you're a parent and you're listening to this, when we're talking about hopelessness, what by definition we're trying to look at there is a place where you start to believe on any level that there's no way to solve for the problem that we're witnessing. And that
Mhm.
problem can be varied, any kind of mental health process, behavioral process, etc. So, by definition, hopelessness that we're starting this conversation is a state where you as a parent start to give up. You start to see no way forward, and that either shuts you down or creates a place of reaction. So, Mary, what do you think of that definition? Where would you start in that conversation?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's spot on. I've seen so many parents arrive to work with us who are in that spot and maybe don't quite notice it yet. They don't notice the impact that it's having on them. And the way I kind of see hopelessness is this neurological process for parents, right? Where they have been in fight or flight for so long, right? Like you said, our brains naturally go negative. Our brains are still naturally programmed to find survival mode. And so after so much what we could call wear and tear, right, of that anxiety that parents live with and function with, that they then kind of find themselves slipping into the freeze mode of our nervous system, which then becomes, why even try? Or, a lot of parents say, I feel as though I've tried everything within our means, right? And for some parents, that's program after program after program. And for some parents, that's a therapist, change at home, school, school shifts, but that they find themselves sometimes in this state of, I just can't hold the hope that there can be change anymore because I feel like I've exhausted the options and I am exhausted. And, that's the point in my work with parents where I say, great, I'm holding the hope for you because I have seen change. What we do can create change. All you have to do is be brave enough to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. And where that takes me is this like awareness for most families that by the time you accept that you need help, you're way down the rabbit hole most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah.
Now, every now and then there's that outlier. There's like, well, we started having problems 2 weeks ago and we don't want this to become bigger.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to us when we find those individuals. But very often the parent that's looking for that level of help and hope is someone that's tried everything that they could resource for themselves.
Hmm.
And here's part of what I want this conversation to kind of step into with each one of you that's listening to this is parents don't typically have master's degrees in counseling.
Thank you for that reminder. I
Okay. So
constantly remind. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. When when your kid starts to struggle, when there's a mental health process budding, we're looking at a 12-year-old and they're starting to shut down at school or not talk to you like they used to, or like something is shifting here, or there's a traumatic event and their personality completely shifts on its head, like overnight. There's a process to this where I want every parent to hear, like, give yourself a break. You didn't expect to, quote unquote, have to deal with, because that's the language we hear a lot, right?
Hmm.
I have to deal with, I have to
Yeah.
handle, I have to, etc. And that's the weight. That's the emotional weight that parents are usually feeling. And we acknowledge that. So within that is the messaging of saying, give yourself a break. You weren't prepared for this scenario, and that's okay. What we're looking for, however, is for that parent to look at their reality and say, okay, there's something new that I don't understand. I'm going to need some skills and strategy and some processes to support the mental health aspect for my child, behavioral health aspect for my child, the neurological process for my child. I mean, just fill in the blank. Whatever it is, you as a parent now need to step into a process that you can be I'm going to say helpful
Hmm.
to become hopeful.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's a core messaging for what we have always tried to do. And sometimes I know we come across really strongly, and
There you go.
there's a reality there where the helpless parent is looking for a foothold.
Hmm.
Take this step first, and you're going to head out of this darkness, right? The metaphoric dark hole that you're in. You're going to start climbing out, but there's a lot of steps to it. And that can be overwhelming, but that's where the support comes in, where our coaching comes in, our process comes in. We're going to step by step lead out of where you are now into a place where you can see the picture differently. You
Hmm.
see the scenario differently. And for so many parents, I mean, we've heard it for years now. I read the books, I Googled what autism is, whatever the statement is, I don't care what it
Hmm.
is. Parents overeducate themselves without developing skill. Let's just be honest.
Yes.
They overeducate themselves without developing skill. And without
Yeah.
skill, knowledge is useless in a functional way of actually interacting, intervening, and
Hmm.
creating change processes for ourselves and for those we love. So in this case, our children, kind of where we kind of try to focus in on. Thoughts on that? The walk out, like where do you find parents and where next?
Yeah. So many thoughts on that. Just hearing you talk about giving them that foothold, right? And you are not meant to understand all of these things, right? You are not meant to know how to deal with a child who's 10 who is all of a sudden having outbursts constantly, or a child who's 15 who, yeah, kind of stopped talking to you a little bit, but then all of a sudden is locking their door and screaming at you and slamming their door and not coming home on time, right? We're not meant to know those things as parents, as loved ones, right? Like that is a level of care needed where, yes, like the books may help you understand or maybe find some sympathy, right? But what you're talking about is what we do is that actionable step. Great, you read the book. What do you know? Don't just give that information to your child. Don't just give that information to your co parent. How do you make that functional within your family system, right? How do we take what we know about, a characteristic of autism or a characteristic of what you might see with someone with substance abuse and actually put it into practice in terms of the parent guiding the way and feeling hopeful enough to begin guiding the way, right? Because that's what we're kind of talking about is this stuckness, right?
Yes. I want you to fill in the blank. If you're a
Yeah,
parent listening to this podcast, you have to understand that the blank is whatever you are working with your child. Okay. So we're talking about failure to launch. We're talking about ADHD, depression, suicidality, like anxiety disorders and social anxiety, all the things. Okay. And when we have this episode where we look at it and say, okay, hopeless, I think any parent that finds themselves in this situation, they understand basically what that means. Like you're at a
right.
place that you're out of ideas. You've resourced to the point that you might be overeducated and exhausted. Okay. This is the place where now here's the call to action, the call from hopeless to hope is the are you ready to understand that there is hope for you, there's hope for your family, and there's hope for your child, but it starts with you. That's it. That's the first step. It starts with you because your child isn't going to magically change. Your family dynamic isn't going to magically change. That's the I've had parents that talk about how hope is their greatest challenge because hope keeps them stuck because they're hoping someone else will solve this scenario for them. They are hoping their child will wake up and decide to change. They are hoping that something will just shift automatically without any intervention. And that hope keeps them locked. And that's ironic, but it's also very true as far as like hopelessness has the word hope in it. People need to understand that. That's part of it's all contained there, but the hope is being reinforced around I don't have to do anything because I'm out of ideas. I tried everything I know. So shifting from that to the call of action and that call of action being if you're ready as a parent hearing this, if you're ready to give hope to yourself, your family, and your child, then it is time for you to start taking steps out. They're not going to magically happen. So you're going to have to do some work and you're going to have to start with step one. And yes, you're tired. We get that. So many of the skills we talk about step into self care, beginning time of separation from the problem to get perspective, doing assessment, all these things that can actually gain you energy back, especially if you start to see hope, if you start making these three changes. Right. So your call to action is just as simple as that for me. What about you? How do you see this play out where a parent steps out of that hole and towards process? What do you see?
I will just say this, something that aligns beautifully with just this overall feeling of like, I'm, I don't know if I have it in me.
Mhm.
I tell parents one of the best things that they can start to do is to actually say less and do less. So, how about that, right? What if we give you permission to actually stop trying so hard? Right? And giving yourself what you need. Really looking at instead of scrambling to quote unquote fix a problem or manage something. And we're talking within the bounds of safety, of course, right? I mean, if you've got
Yes.
an unsafe child, that's a little different. But the parents who are constantly worrying, right? We talk a lot about mental energy, not just physical energy of, getting to soccer, then getting to here, then, all of these things. But the mental energy you spend worrying or planning or overthinking what could be next, instead use that time to really check in with yourself. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself. I mean, we've all heard the cliche, you can't pour from an empty cup. And a lot of times, the parents that, we see arrive to us are almost empty, or past empty. And so this idea of if I can actively think about how can I step back if my child is safe and stop begging for them to come out of their room or, fill in the blank. What is the issue that you are constantly trying to figure out, right? Um,
Yep.
and just start focusing on I have 5 minutes. I could go up there and try to interact, or I can take 5 minutes and walk the dog, go outside barefoot, call a friend and say, "Hey, I've only got 5 minutes, but I wanted to see how you were." And it's the doing less in terms of continuously trying to solve a problem or fix something, right? And that leads into what you were talking about with that step of assessment, right? Because if we're hands off, we can truly see what is going on. And if I'm truly regulated, I can see from a more clear lens what's going on, what's actually happening. If I say less, my child might fill in the space, right? Fill in the gaps and say, give me some more information, some more data on what they actually might be needing that I've just missed the mark, right? Once I was working with a mom and her son was really difficult in the mornings, very easily set off, right? 0 to 100 very quickly. Some pretty unsafe behaviors actually in the morning. And we had been working together for a couple of weeks. And, we talked about this idea of anger being an umbrella emotion, right? A secondary emotion. And it's like it clicked one day. The mom had been seeing this as the child being angry about some medical situations and some other things going on for them, right? But one day it just clicked and she said, "Oh, are you anxious right now?" Just by stepping back and listening more and not doing as much and not trying to pour herself into this what she saw as a problem, right, which was becoming a problem in the family system. She asked that one simple question, and the son said, "Well, of course I'm anxious. What did you think?" Right? And it was just this aha moment that she allowed herself because she was able to step back and really start to look at what is my son saying instead of what do I feel like I need to give him right now?
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, there's countless examples of that, but I think for the purpose of this episode, I think we should step into the hope
Yeah.
and kind of talk about the processes that we see a lot of families get to
Mhm.
when they do the work, right? They answer the call, they go through their scenario, like you're saying, and they get to that place of like, okay, step one, two, and three, here we go. So when it comes to hope, I want each and every parent to understand that hope is built in these scenarios. We have a misconception in our culture that hope is something that happens for us or to us. It's kind of that karma view, but that's not actually how it functions. Hope, when it comes to especially family systems and mental health and relationship and kind of parenting, allows us to look at it differently and more clearly because hope is something that is created. And hope is created through action. When one person does something different, it creates opportunity for new experience and new outcome. That's hope. At its root, that is hope. Now, on a social level, when we look from behavioral science for any parent that's interested, hope in that format is something that we see a lot, but what we see is we see it in group format, right? Large numbers of people sharing a belief about a system or a process that should change, working towards that change. That is action in motion, and that is hope. They are building their own hope for a future that is different, for a scenario that is different, for a timeline that is different than what they were just, that group thought they were just supposed to accept. This is how it is. This is how it is a mind trick for hopelessness. Hope was built through one person deciding to start a conversation about something that they think should be different, and then growing that into 2 people, 4 people, 10 people, etc. And that's how hope moves through social situations and social dynamic. Now, the checks and balances to that is that others don't share the same hope, and they're working and trying to find it. So, in that way, on a social level, hope is about finding balance and creating change over time. And I use that example for any parent that's listening so you understand that it's the same for you. One person has to start a process of change. Guess what? That's you. If you are different as the parent, it offers opportunity for your child to be different. That's the root of all the work we do and all the work that you're going to find when you start to dissect and do assessment on someone from hopelessness to hope is a moment of decision that change is necessary. And then from there, the actionable steps to create that change with the onus, the responsibility put on you, not on the child or the partner or the whole family or etc. The responsibility is put on you. And yes, there is an emotional weight to that. God, I feel that in all the parents we've ever talked to. Yeah, taking on that responsibility is exhausting, but taking on that responsibility with skill and a plan and the ability to see that in 16 steps from now, something's going to be different than it has been that a pattern we've been locked in for the last 3 years is going to be different in 16 steps from now. When you can see that roadmap, when you see the playbook, there's a great metaphor. 1 to 2 to 3 to 16 equals the first level of change. And then we're going to come back and start moving towards the next level and the next level so that in 3 months, 6 months, a year, sometimes longer than that, you can have the life that you hope for. You can have the relationship with your child you hope for. They can have a functional young adulthood. They can overcome some of the challenges related to their personality disorder or crippling anxiety or autism or whatever it is, fill in the blank. But you creating with skill the roadmap and steps. And that's where, work with someone like us comes in. But we help in that assessment and step so that hope comes out of the work. You put in the work, you create hope for yourself and your child and your whole family dynamic. Hope is not a stationary effect. Hope is a momentum effect. Thoughts on that? I know I just
Yeah,
went off the deep end there.
no, no,
What do you got?
everything you said really rings true, and one other big piece I really want to impart is it's that group mentality you were talking about. That's where the support comes in, whether it be us as a coach, right? Saying, "Oh, you've tried this, but have you tried it this way, or have you tried it more than once?" Right? That's a famous one we see. "Well, I tried it, it didn't
Yes.
work. Try again." To get you, to help you get step by step, right? We don't just say, "Here are some skills, go try them." We
Yes.
stay with
Absolutely.
you, whether that's the community that we're creating online, right? That supports one another and talks about, yeah, I've been through the same thing. You know, I've been in that place. Being able to talk with other parents who have been through similar things, who really understand where you're coming from and can, champion you into sticking it through and having that hope and holding the hope, right? It's almost, like for some people, it's like the fake it till you make it. If we're
Yeah.
looking at this and like, put on your hopeful glasses, right? What do you see now, right? What does that look like? And we use that a lot in the therapeutic world.
Yes.
And then let's step back and look at how is that actually feasible for you? So it's about also, yeah, having that support step by step by step. You're gonna have your days where you're exhausted. You're gonna have your days that feel harder than others. But, one big thing I have noticed is a lot of times when I'm working with parents, we'll get on our first call after the training or a second call after the training. They were like, well, that went horrible. This week was just horrible. Right. And then once we actually talk about it, the week went really well. It just felt like a lot. Right. And
Yes.
just having that outside perspective to help you hold on to hope, to help you see actually, I think what you're feeling is valid. It felt like a lot, but you handled it really well. You utilized the skills, you utilized the tools, you did the thing we were talking about. And so having that support, I think, is such a big function of hope, especially when, yeah, we can't hold it for ourselves, right? Having others hold it for us, not in a cheerleader Pollyanna way, right? But I've seen people like you and I've seen this work and I know we can do this together and we've got this whole community behind us. Let's see what we can do, right? It may not be the exact thing you're thinking might have come out of this, but let's see what we can do together. And just seeing parents shift once they utilize the skills and things begin to change. I mean, it's this feeling that's almost indescribable for a lot of parents, right? It's this, I stepped back, I didn't say the thing I normally say. And guess what? 2 days later, my kid came to me and asked me about something. They start to see this momentum, whether that just be an opening in the family system that wasn't there, an ability to work with you on how do we do this differently? It's not really working for us, every time we try to wake up in the morning. Whatever it is, fill in your blank, right? You, the parent, know what that is for you. But being able to see those first kind of aha moments of hope are just, I mean, it's why I do this work. I
Yep.
I think it's why we all do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can close with that. I mean, for any parent that's listening to this, where we're trying to get to here is that hope exists. And sometimes even we forget to talk about the victories, right? And some of those victories are really small, where, the kid got out of bed and didn't yell at anybody. Kid went to school. The kid got a job. The kid, you know, only cussed at you twice today, not 5 times today. That's a victory. So, from this move from hopeless to hopeful, make sure that you understand that you are the one. You are the one capable of creating hope. And that's powerful. It really is. And you're not alone. And there are thousands of stories of victory for parents that have found themselves in situations that they didn't plan for or they didn't understand in the beginning. And they learned how to step in differently, how to be present with the mental health, with the behavioral challenge, with the neurological process, with the diagnosis that at first might have been devastating, but they were able to figure out a way to push through. So you're never going to be alone because there are millions and millions of us who are parents, who are professionals, who are trying to support parents, and who are working with support groups of parents to parents. You're never going to be alone unless you isolate yourself. So come find hope. Find us at parenttrainers.com if you'd like to work with us to get that direction and build your roadmap and the steps out from hopelessness to hope. And we'd love to support you.